So I do breath work. I use breath work three ways. So I use breath work tactically, which is the ability to ground ourselves and regain our composure in the middle of a stressful event. I use breathwork strategically, which is the ability to expand our window of tolerance so we can handle more adversity and chaos without getting thrown into hyper or hypoarousal. And then I also use breathwork to change and transform limiting beliefs. And so what I love to talk about just like the physiological response of a stress response and why that occurs and really helping people understand it's very normal to have a stress response. And so how do we just redirect that stress response when we feel like it's, because if we were to be chased by a bear, completely appropriate that we have the stress response that we do. The difference is we confuse being chased by a bear and maybe our partner saying that our in-laws moving in for the next 4 months. So, right, we get confused. And so it's how do we rewire that? Typically work with entrepreneurs and executives, but this breath work, I really want to democratize it and share it with as many people as possible.
We're here with John Hall today, who is a performance coach, and he's going to talk with us about breathwork and how he can change the way we're feeling and operating in our daily lives. So welcome, John.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a performance coach. I work primarily with executives and entrepreneurs and work with them to help them be able to really reach peak performance, which the biggest thing I teach is that successful people don't have less stress. They have better stress management techniques. So I've also taken these concepts that I work with the clients that I work with, and I love sharing them with a broader audience, whether it's a student, it's a young professional, it's a single parent or someone who's grown in the workplace, right? Anybody who has stress in their life that would like to reduce their stress. I love to share these concepts and share these techniques to be able to share this out with more people.
That's great. And what kind of techniques are they?
So we can go into that a little bit more detail. I'd love to be able to share, but it's all the primary thing is based on both breath work and physiology. So one of the key things that I've learned as I've been doing this work is that we tend to think of stress as being in our mind. I'm stressed out, or if we think of being stressed out, we think of our mind being stressed out, right? That's typically where we kind of go to as our mind is cluttered or stressed out or we're feeling depressed. But the reality is that these things are a full somatic experience, meaning it is a full body experience, right? When we are stressed, our body is stressed. Our body is telling us we aren't safe. That is part of what leads to, a fight or flight response. When we are feeling shut down or low energy or depressed, again, our body is engaged in this. And what's really fascinating is that the recent work that's been done that has started exploring the mind body connection, they found an example. They had a UK study. They had people who were clinically depressed. They had them smile at themselves, force a smile in the mirror for 10 minutes. And they found it was as effective as Prozac in
Wow.
combating depression for clinically depressed people. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that is amazing.
So
A lot of people, a lot of money.
that's right. That's right. And so, we think about, if we think about, for example, if you've ever watched the Charlie Brown specials, right? So the Charlie Brown specials are very popular in the US. If you've ever seen Charlie Brown and you think of the image of Charlie Brown with the sad music and his head's forward and slumped over and his shoulders are slumped forward, and you see him doing that little sad shuffle down the street. And he doesn't have to say a word, right? He doesn't have to even look at you. You can tell by his body that he's sad, that he's depressed. You can just tell by looking at him that he feels this way. You can see his emotions by feeling this way. And we think, well, gosh, if we're thinking these things, that it's going to make our body look a certain way, right? And that's absolutely true, but the inverse is true as well. So how we're holding our body, our physiology is also impacting our mental state. And so what I do is I work with, and I teach one of the techniques I teach clients all the time is it's BPM, like beats per minute. You think of your heart rate going up in a stressful situation, and I teach them the acronym which stands for breath, physiology, mindset. And there's a very specific sequence that I go through with each one that allows you to have a very simple, straightforward technique that you can use to help redirect a stress response and redirect it into something that's more appropriate for the situation.
That's amazing. I never even thought about your posture and the way you smile at yourself or you don't smile, how that would affect your mental health.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, and it is easier said than done, right? That is part of the mastery is learning how to do this on a regular basis. But even the awareness of it to go, wow, there's a link between my physiology and my mental state allows us to begin bringing awareness to this and beginning to shift it.
So how do you do that? How do you teach that to people?
Yeah, well, if I what I'd love to do first is talk a little bit about our stress response and what happens in our body with the stress response, right? Because I think that's effective to understanding how the mechanisms work.
Okay.
So the first thing is when we have a stress response, right? It tends to go one of two ways. We go into hyper arousal, which is a what we typically would think of as a fight or flight response is a very common hyper arousal situation. So the feeling that we need to fight or we need to run, we need to get away, and our body is activated for that. Right. The other extreme is hypoarousal, which is where we're shut down with withdrawn. And that's where we feel like we have almost no energy and we need almost outside help to get engaged again, right? And typically we've all experienced both of these. Now, when we think about what these do, let's imagine, right? And a lot of times we can get into we can say, oh, I shouldn't be stressed, I shouldn't be upset, I should have more energy. And we can blame ourselves for feeling one of these two stress responses, right? I like to call it shoulding. We can should all over ourselves, right? By thinking what we're supposed to be doing and blaming ourselves for being this way. So I love to start by talking about why these stress responses are absolutely appropriate in the situation that we're in. So if you imagine for an instance, you're out in a stroll somewhere in the mountains, and all of a sudden you come around the bend in the hike, right? In the hiking trail, and there's a grizzly bear staring you down. Okay. What is going to happen at that moment? Your body is going to say, your body and mind probably very simultaneously are going to say, I'm not safe. I'm in danger. There is a giant grizzly bear here. I'm in danger. I need to do something. Now, at that moment, right, what happens? Our body floods with different chemicals to prepare us to fight or flight, right? They prepare us to run or fight the bear. Most likely in this case, I choose running. That would be my response with a big grizzly bear, right? But we are basically shutting down functions of our body that are no longer needed. So we're shutting down our digestive system. We're shutting down our sexual response. We're shutting down our higher level critical thinking. So what happens is we have a part of our brain called the amygdala, which just sits kind of right on the above our spine at the base of our skull. And this prefrontal cortex, kind of in the front part of our brain, is our higher executive thinking. The amygdala is more of our initial gut response, what people might call the lizard brain. And so what happens in a stress response, and they have a researcher by the name of Dr. John Gottman found when our heart rate goes over 100 beats per minute, the blood flow to this critical thinking part of our brain shuts down. And what happens is this part of our body, the more primitive part, takes over. Now, perfectly normal response because when I see that grizzly in the woods, I don't want to be thinking about the higher meaning or the spiritual meaning of seeing a grizzly on the trail, right? I don't want to think about, what's the most cost effective method to, address the situation. I want to run really quickly the opposite direction. So my stress response in this case, my body and mind are linking together to give me the most effective response to give me the highest chance of survival in this state. Now look at the other way. Let's say the grizzly does get a hold of me or something happens, I get in an accident and now I'm hurt. So now we look at this other extreme, hypoarousal. So what's going to happen? My heart rate's going to slow. My blood pressure is going to drop. I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to numb out. I'm going to feel less. I'm going to go in a state that gives me the biggest chance of survival for someone else to find me and help me. So my body is almost going into this, let me save as much energy as I can mode. Let me disconnect from the pain that I'm feeling to give someone a chance to help me and find me and help me and get me to safety. So in both of these cases, we have a perfectly normal biological response that we have evolved over time to be able to react one way or the other to help us survive in a very dangerous situation.
Hey, well, that totally makes sense when you put it that way. I wonder, how does that affect everyday stress, like if you're at work? What can you do to help yourself?
Yeah, so let's talk about that because that's a perfect segue, right? What happens is we rarely meet grizzlies on the hiking trail when right? Because we normally don't aren't out hiking in the woods and there's not many woods left near a lot of us anyhow. But what happens is that we have a report that maybe is due on a very tight deadline. We have a speaking engagement. Maybe we break up with a partner. We have a bad fight with a partner. Or we get told by our partner that their in-laws moving in for, right? Our in-laws moving in for 4 months, right? All of these could be very stressful situations for us. And what can happen is it can trigger the same response in us that meeting the bear in the woods would. So we're having the same evolutionary response for our safety, but we aren't actually in a physically dangerous situation, right? So in this case, and especially when we stay immersed in this, so we're just chronically in the state of stress. Because what was fascinating as I did this work is there's actually three different types of stress. There's a something called new stress, which is neutral. Maybe you're reading about bad news. We read about a bridge collapse or a war or famine or something, and you're reading about it. You don't know anyone directly impacted. It doesn't directly impact you, but it bothers you. You're empathetic. It's stressful to you to read about this. Right? The second stress is called eustress. And eustress is actually healthy stress. We need this stress to live. We need a little bit of stress to live, right? Stress is if you think of almost going to the gym and we have the resistance of the weights as we lift weights. Eustress is like the gym of our life. It's like gym stress. It's like, okay, this is going to be difficult, but it's also good for me. So if you think, for example, of a sports team, right? And someone has to go on to make a winning kick. Maybe there's a winning penalty kick and they have to go on and make the penalty kick to win the game. It's a stressful situation because there's a lot on the line. They could win or lose the game. But at the same time, they have a team that's there. It's short term. They are prepared for this. They're skilled in this, right? They're not picking a random first person from the stand saying, go kick the winning field goal. It's a pro sports player, right? So again, that's a healthy stress. That's eustress. That's healthy. What happens is when we live in this state of distress, which is the unhealthy stress, distress is the one that we're just constantly bathing our body in these stress chemicals. We're creating disease, we're creating health issues, right? That's where we're constantly staying in this stress response, and we aren't redirecting it to something else when it's appropriate.
Okay. So I understand from what you're saying that there is good stress, there is neutral stress, and there is distress.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you're saying that you can do these breathwork techniques and they can bring you to a calmer state from this distress.
That's right. So let's talk about, right? We talked a little bit about what's happening in our bodies with a stress response. So we saw the bear, right? We saw the bear, our body released chemicals, our amygdala took over our brain to give priority to safety and survival. And our body is now shut down or activated in certain things to make our survival possible. Great again when we see the bear. But now imagine it was just someone telling us that we had to go give a report on a very tight deadline. We don't need that response, but we're having a physiological response. A lot of times we think in our head, well, I'm stressed. I can acknowledge I'm stressed about this deadline. I shouldn't be stressed. Let me not be stressed. But the problem is that is like a 3-year-old toddler telling an 800-pound gorilla of our body to calm down. It doesn't work. Our body is feeling this stress. Our body is reacting. Our body is having a response. So for us to be able to redirect this, we need to tell our body to calm down, right? So then our body will tell our mind, we're safe, and allow our mind to calm down. So this is where the first part of BPM, remember breath, physiology, mindset, this is where the B part comes in. So I believe breath is one of these things, and it's been proven that allows us to calm down. We can consciously tell ourselves, let's take a deep breath. There's a very specific way we can do it, and that will signal safety to our body.
Wow. So basically, you can't tell yourself to calm down because it's that process that started and it's out of control. So
That's
if
right.
you start the breathing process, it's telling your body to go ahead and calm down instead of your mind trying and not working.
Precisely, precisely. So if we want to do the breath, and it's a very specific, there's two parts to this breath, and I'll share this because there's a specific way to do it. So the science behind it, just so you understand a little bit, the science behind it is that we have something called the vagus nerve, which wanders through our body, right? And wanders and connects a number of major organs and input systems to our brain. And the vagus, it's based on the Latin term for like vagabond, right? For wanderer. So the vagus nerve wanders through our body. And when we breathe in this particular way, it's the vagus nerve is signaling then that we're safe to the brain. So here's what I want you to do just to start. Put a hand on your chest and put a hand on your belly. And without thinking about it, just take a deep breath in. So which hand moved more, your belly hand or your chest hand? Your chest hand. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. Go ahead and exhale out, hands on the same two places. But this time I want you to bring all your attention to making your belly hand move. So breathing in, just let the belly hand move.
Okay.
Did you feel the difference between those two
Yeah,
breaths?
I totally did.
Yeah,
Like it's kind of like when you sing and you try to breathe from your diaphragm.
precisely. So belly breathing is something that we do when we're safe, right? We rarely belly breathe when we're in danger. We tend to chest breathe when we're in danger. So the belly breathing is something that is signaling our body that we are safe. When we take that deep belly breath, it's signaling the body, hey, I'm safe. I'm okay. Now we're going to add another piece to this. So what I want you to do this time is again, the same deep belly breath. We're going to breathe in through the nose for 5 seconds. We're going to exhale through the mouth for 7 seconds, right? So go ahead and exhale out. Breath in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then exhaling through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that was just one breath, but what are you feeling?
You relax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So those two things together, the deep belly breath with an exhale longer than the inhale, are both incredibly powerful in signaling to our brain and our body that we're safe. So we're telling our body, we're using our breath to tell our body that we're safe. So our mind isn't trying to say, calm down. Our mind is saying, take a breath, which is far easier when we're under stress to say, take a breath, then calm down. But the act of breathing is telling our body to calm down and begins to release the hijack that the amygdala has and let blood start coming back up into our brain. It's telling our body, it's telling our mind we're safe. So now what we did is the 3-year-old girl in the room told the 800-pound gorilla to breathe. The 800-pound gorilla breathed and said, I'm safe to the little girl.
That's great. I think it's incredible because it's something you could do absolutely anywhere and at any age. Children could do it, adults, elderly, everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the first part. That's the B part of the breath. So now let's go to the P part of physiology. So I talked a little bit earlier about the UK study that found that, that found that smiling in a mirror for 10 minutes was as effective as Prozac for clinically depressed patients in this study. So what we're going to do then is we breathe first, right? Because that's the first step we can do. That's the most powerful step. So we can take a few breaths. We can begin to get our body to tell our mind to calm down. Now, what we're going to do is use our mind. We're going to double down on this. So we're going to use our mind to think, what's my physiology? Am I collapsed in? Am I protecting myself? Am I hunched over? Am I curled up? Or am I open? Is my chest open? Are my shoulders back and down? Right? Am I relaxed in this top part of my body? Right? So as we do this, you can feel, right? You feel more confident, you feel more relaxed, and
Yeah.
you feel more safe.
Hey,
So
that
again, go ahead.
oh, I was just saying that's very impressive. It does work.
Yeah, so, they did again, there's a number of studies. Amy Cuddy did a number of TED Talks around this that was fantastic. And she spoke about how she did a study where she found just people putting their hands on their hip like a Wonder Woman pose or putting their arms out like a Superman pose and holding those poses for 10 minutes actually led people to make more effective risk decisions. They were willing to take a little bit more risk for a bigger reward, which was an appropriate risk decision. So the physiology, and there's so many studies around this where physiology changes our mindset in subtle but powerful ways. So first thing is we're breathing. We're getting our body to start releasing that hijack, right? Telling our brain we're safe. Second is we're using the physiology now to also signal from our body to our mind that we're safe.
Wow, I love that. So you do this on a regular basis with clients?
I do. This is one of the techniques that I incorporate. So I work with clients on a number of different sets. So I use breath three different ways. The first is I use breath tactically, which is like in this situation to go, I'm in a stressful situation. Let me calm down, right? Let me redirect the stress response. The second one is when I use breath strategically. So what that means is that there are breathwork practices we can do on a regular basis when we're not stressed that will allow us to expand what's called our window of tolerance, is our ability to handle chaos or stress. And it also is training our body that when I breathe, I'm calm. So when I'm in a stressful response, right, it's almost like when you feed your dog and your dog knows when you start scooping the dog food to run to the same corner and sit and look at you because it's about to get fed. Well, when we breathe on a regular basis and we build up the connection between breath and safety, what we're doing is we're training our body that breath equals safety. So now when we breathe in a stressful situation, it's even more effective because our body knows exactly what's going to happen. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to calm down now. So let me start calming down, right? Just like a little puppy going, okay, I'm going to get fed. It's going, oh, I'm going to calm down. So this is the next part that comes out of it, right? By doing this, we're able to train our body to calm down. So one of the things I teach clients all the time is I teach clients that successful people don't have less stress, they have better stress management tools. So this is part of what I work with clients on who have, they're growing a very busy business or they're in a very high level executive position. So I'm working with them on how to be able to adapt and handle more chaos, make more effective decisions, right? Be more productive. The final way I work with breath is to shift limiting beliefs. So we all have these beliefs that we pick up over time that we accept as true, right? So maybe someone told us we weren't good enough. Maybe someone told us that we weren't worthy of love. Maybe someone told us that we weren't worthy of success, right? And we weren't old enough or we didn't have the tools in place to be able to challenge these and say that's not true, right? Or maybe they just got told to us over and over and over again until we eventually began to believe them. So by using breath work in, very particular methods that I do one-on-one, we can start to dissolve these limiting beliefs, right? We can start to bring them up to the surface and be aware of them, right? Because we need to be very safe to do this. This is almost like a core part. It can become a core part of our identity, which sounds crazy, right? But, I had a belief that I had to constantly sacrifice myself for love, right? I needed to constantly give up part of myself to be loved. Sounds crazy, but that was my belief through childhood and everything else that I had. So, but because it became a part of my identity, if you had just told me that, I might get very defensive. No, that's not true, right? No, I don't believe that. Of course, I don't believe that. But by using breath, we can go to a place of safety, allow someone to feel very safe, allow someone to examine this limiting belief. And even if you don't know the why you did it or why you believe it, but you simply examine and go, wow, I can see the parts of that that are true. What happens is that the conscious awareness on it, right, makes our subconscious start breaking it down and changing it. So the very act of being aware that I kind of have this belief can begin to unravel that belief.
Wow, that's great. That'd be great. Like you're using it and in therapy and all kinds of things. And I'm thinking that this is not just immediate responses, like you're feeling better immediately, but I would think it has long-term health benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all sorts of really cool benefits just from changing the way that you breathe. There's so many amazing benefits that come out of it. I had my gallbladder. I didn't know all this 15 years ago. And I had my gallbladder removed when I was in my early 40s. I had been sitting at my desk all day. I was a technology executive, right? I was sitting at my desk all day. We didn't know how unhealthy sitting was. And so I was breathing shallow. I wasn't moving all these lower parts of my body. And I wound up having emergency gallbladder surgery. They told me I was just hours away from the ICU. Things had gotten so bad. So when we change the way we breathe, when we can focus ourselves to do more of that belly breathing consistently throughout the day, anytime we can think of it, we focus on that belly breathing. There are all sorts of health benefits that come out of it. We're getting more oxygen in our lungs because we, instead of fighting our rib cage to breathe, we're allowing the breath to come more naturally and move the organs out of the way. It improves our oxygenation levels. It improves the calmness of our body. There's so many cool things. And I go into this. I actually have a course called Breathe Easier, and it's on my website. And I go into all these specifics of the breath and go into a lot more detail. So it breaks it down over just 2 short weeks with short little lessons, but it helps people learn a lot more about this and all the benefits that are there for breath.
That's great. So I've really enjoyed this because I've learned so much today.
Mm.
Where can people find you so that they can talk to you about doing this with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is John Hall Coaching, John Hall, Hall Coaching, one word. And you can go on there and it has information on how to contact me, how to book a one-on-one session, and also the courses there under programs. You'll find the course called Breathe Easier. It's all on the website.
Great. And I will make sure I put that in my show notes for everybody. And is there anything you want to go over or leave our listeners with today?
One of the things that I love to share, and I love that you asked this question, and I'll share this one final story. One of the things I found in my own life is that as I went through and I looked at my childhood and some things that happened there. My parents got divorced when I was younger. I wound up marrying my first wife was someone who was very abusive, and it just doubled down and reinforced a lot of this. And so what happened was I started labeling myself, right? And I labeled myself as unworthy of love or, not able to be calm or not good enough, right? So I picked up these labels. And then I even picked up after my 25-year marriage collapsed, I picked up, well, I had a label that I was divorced, right? So I started adding all these labels. And what I had to learn is that I could allow these labels in my past to define me or to describe me. Meaning we can allow what happened in our past to define who we are and say, well, I'm this way because of this. This happened to me, so therefore I'm this way. And that past defines who we can be in our future. Or we can say, you know what? This is the past and it did happen and it describes me and it describes where I've been and it describes what I've overcome. But I have the ability to write whatever I want for my future.
Love that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, John. I really appreciate you coming today and talking with us.
Mm. Amy, thanks so much for the invite. It's been such a wonderful time. I've loved getting to chat with you here today.
No problem. I'd love to too. All right, that was Advancing with Amy and John Hall. It was great learning that we can actually have some control over our emotions and feelings by controlling our breath. I hope all of you got as much out of that as I did. If you do like what you're hearing, please make sure to rate and review and subscribe and share. Thanks so much, everyone, and keep advancing, warriors.